Zion, take one. Let's do this right.
Hey guys, welcome back to Slow Travel Chronicles. My name is Stephanie.
I'm Garrett.
And in this video, we're going to talk about Zion National Park. We spent a month in Utah, approximately, not exactly a month, but we had a detour to Idaho. Anyway, our last park was in Zion. We stayed in Kanab, Utah. If you haven't already seen the video of our Airbnb tour, I'll have a link in the description below. Check that out. Also check out our other videos of the other parks, also listed in the description box. And Zion was my favorite park of all 5 parks that we went to on this trip.
I'd probably put it second or third. I like Zion, don't get me wrong, but it's not Bryce Canyon, so.
It has the trees and the green, and that's what I like about the park.
It also has a lot of crowds.
So much so you have to use a shuttle.
Yeah, the park scenic drive is closed to cars, I think 9 or 10 months out of the year. So you pull in, if you're lucky enough to get a parking spot at the visitor center, which the visitor center fills up around probably 9:30 in the morning.
Get there early for sure.
Yeah, you can catch the shuttle bus into the park. It is incredibly efficient. We really didn't have to wait for it. You hop right on, and I think if you were to go all the way to the end and back, it takes a little over an hour, and there are 6 or 7 stops along the way. 1 or 2 of the stops is one
Are closed.
Yeah, are closed.
Or they're only offered on one, so like on the way back.
Correct.
Up, down canyon versus up canyon.
Correct. Now, if you get to Zion late, which means after about 9:30, there will be signs up saying the parking lot is full, go park in Springdale. Springdale's a little town right outside Zion. It's basically hotels and outfitters. I mean, it exists.
And restaurants and galleries.
Yeah, but it exists to serve the Zion tourist traffic. And parking there, we did park there one day because we got there late. The parking lots in the city run from $40 close to Zion. We parked in a $25 lot. And then there is a Zion bus that runs through town, picks up people at designated parking spots or hotels, and drives them to the visitor center as well. So, you know,
Don't do that.
if you can avoid it, don't do it. It does add probably about an extra half an hour onto your day. The day that we parked out in Springdale, it took us about 20 to 30 minutes waiting for a bus, riding the bus, walking into the pedestrian entrance at Zion. So, I mean, it's not bad. You don't have a choice. The park's full. I mean, you know, but that's just something you have to be aware of when you're going there.
And we had to do that on a Thursday in October.
Yeah.
And so we kind of thought when we got there, like, and we didn't even get there that late.
No.
We just thought, oh, it's not going to be bad. It's a Thursday. It's the middle of the week. Fall breaks are over. It was not.
Wrong.
It was very packed. But on our first day there, that was our second visit there. On our first day there, we did the Emerald Pools Trail, upper and lower. That was a little steep at times.
Yeah, that's the lower Emerald Pools Trail is very popular. It's relatively flat, and it is basically a sidewalk. So you get a lot of slow-moving people on there. You can walk around, you can go underneath the lower falls. It's very pretty. And I think a lot of people
Are taking their Instagram pictures.
Well,
that's why it's slow.
That is true. You do get a lot of Instagram pictures right at the falls, but a lot of people, or at least a decent amount of them, turn around. We kept going. If you go up and you head up, you go to the upper falls trail, and you know at the mile marker says it's 0.3 miles to the upper falls pool.
It was farther than that, I think.
It was pretty steep, and it was basically scrambling over rocks the whole way. I mean, you weren't having to use your hands, but you're essentially rock and sand hopping, and the rocks we're talking about are basketball size and bigger. If you have hiking poles, you probably want them on that section of the trail.
And we have them, and we left them in the trunk.
Yeah.
But there were nice people that would help, like when we got to the upper pool, that helped us across the trail.
Yeah,
Or helped me across the river area, not a river, like a creek, a stream.
Yeah. There was a stream. To get to the nice area, you gotta walk across like 4 rocks strategically placed. It was fine. They weren't big steps and they weren't loose. But you know, we did hear a story about one lady falling in shortly before we got there. We didn't see her, but that water was cold.
Yeah, and I wasn't taking a chance, so I hiked super slow, and we made it. I helped a lady across. Her husband helped me, and then I helped her, so it all worked out.
And we were fortunate in a way, unfortunate in another way. Our first day in Zion, it snowed the night before. All of the mountains and the upper plateau level was dusted in snow. So when we drove into the park, I mean, the roads were fine, the lower elevations were fine, the trails were snow-free, but you could see snow above you everywhere. And it was really beautiful. And when we were on the shuttle bus, the bus driver kept saying, "Oh, look at this, first snow last night, it looks beautiful. And oh, by the way, it's really, really cold out." And it was cold.
Yeah, it was cold.
Those trails, at least in the morning, they're almost entirely in the shade. So you need to be aware of that. You're not going to be in the sun. Now on the way down, we did not take the lower Pools Trail fall back. We hopped on the Kayenta Trail, which goes north or up canyon out of the area. And so we did that just to have something different. It was not a sidewalk, it was an actual trail. It was nice, and I'd highly recommend you use that trail at least for part of your journey if you do that hike.
It wasn't very busy either.
No, it was much less busy than the lower Pools Trail.
And then after that, we hopped on the shuttle bus, if I remember correctly. And then we stopped, we made an impromptu stop at the grotto, I think. That was stop 6.
That's where we got back on the bus. When we went up canyon that morning, we got off at the lodge, started the hike there. The trail that we left the pools from took us to the grotto, which is the next stop up canyon. We hopped on the bus there, went back to the visitor center, and we were planning on having a picnic lunch, but it was too cold. I mean, it was just too damn cold. So we turned the car on and turned the heater on and had our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and apples in the car.
Yeah, and then we, what did we do next? Watchman?
We did the Watchman Trail. It is one of the few trails that starts from the visitor center. You don't have to get back on the bus, you just walk across the street, and it's a 3-mile round trip, well, 1.5 miles out and 1.5 miles back. And it's fairly steep in sections. It takes you up onto a plateau where you can overlook the town of Springdale, you overlook the Watchman Formation. Really nice trail. It was mostly in the sun, so by that point in the day it was getting hot.
We took off our layers.
Took off our layers. I really enjoyed the hike, but there were times when Stephanie was cussing me because, you know, you're going up for a lot of the trail.
Yeah, I like flat, if you haven't picked up on that yet. But I'm trying to get better.
You got better.
Yeah, I got better.
You got better.
So
that was day 1 in the park.
yeah, and then we drove back to our Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went to the Wave. One day there will be a separate video, or I might talk about it at the end of this video. I haven't decided yet, but definitely try to get a Wave permit. And then the next day we went
back to Zion.
That was the day we had a park in Springdale.
Yeah.
And we did the Riverside Walk to the Narrows. That was gorgeous. That was my favorite hike that we have done on this whole trip.
Yeah, it's all the way back and back the canyon at the Temple of Sinawaba bus stop. It, along with the Zion Lodge bus stop, that is where most of the people get on or get off the bus. It's the most crowded areas. The trail was about, I think it's 1 mile each way. And one thing we learned when you get off and you start the trail back to the Narrows, it's a sidewalk, okay? I mean, we saw people in wheelchairs on there. They market this as the handicap accessible tour or trail. It's beautiful. Everybody does it. It's great they've got a sidewalk. But after about 50 yards, you'll see a sign that says Riverside Access or River Access to the left. Hell, you walk down to the river, and when we say river, it's like, if you live out east, it's like a big stream, it ain't a river.
It's the Virgin River.
Yeah. And there is a trail that walks or goes along the river pretty much all the way back to the Narrows. So if you don't want to take the sidewalk, just when you see the sign that says River Access, go down to the river and look, and you'll find trails that follow the riverbed all the way upstream.
There were fewer people back there, and you could hear the river from the paved area, but it just was so pretty
Yeah.
to hear the river flowing by the river. So we walked up that way, and we got to the Narrows, and you know, we're here in October. The bus driver on the way up said that the water temperature was 49 degrees and that it was moving at like 47. She said moving 47, but I don't know what that means. But I don't think that's miles per hour. Maybe
It's
it
probably
is.
cubic feet per minute or something like that.
Anyway, we would have had to have rented boots and waders, and those were like 70 or 80 bucks, and we chose not to do that. If we ever come back this way, which I would come back to Zion, I would want to do it in the spring or summer and go up the Narrows for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's when we got to where the Narrows started, there was a steady stream of people in rental gear heading up into the Narrows. I will tell you this, those outfitters are making a killing on renting those waterproof outfits. The funny thing was, we talked to a few people who walked several miles up trail that morning, and you could tell because they were wet up well above their knees. You know, they had a great time. But we saw a whole lot of people with rental gear on that I bet you didn't go more than 100 yards upstream for whatever reason. Their shoes were barely wet. Their pants were not wet at all. There was a group of about 10 people on our bus, all with the rental gear, all gung-ho to do this hike. We got off the bus. They took off up the trail. Hell, they weren't even in the water for 5 minutes probably because we passed them leaving, going back to get on the bus.
I don't remember that.
I don't know why somebody would pay all that money to rent gear and not go out there. And I think part of it is, it sounds great that you're going to walk in water and you go into this narrow section, but the riverbeds are rocks, okay? They rent poles along with your gear because the odds of you falling is pretty high if you don't have something to steady yourself with. Because the riverbed is rocks ranging in size from probably a golf ball to a soccer ball. It is not necessarily an easy hike if you're not very careful where you put your feet. But like Stephanie said, we didn't do it. We didn't want to fool with it. I would love to do it in a warm season. And part of it is, you know, these people, they had all this rental gear on. It's not something you want to be hiking in elsewhere in the park. So they would park, get their rental gear in Springdale, put it on, go up to the Narrows, do whatever they were going to do, whether it was 5 minutes or an hour, then they had to go back to Springdale to get their gear off.
But that's a good point. So if you know that you have to do that, I would just plan on spending a lot of the time out there on the Riverside Walk in that area. And one of the people that I talked to, they had only hiked 2 miles into the Narrows, and she said there you could go miles more. So you could make it a whole day.
Oh, easily.
For sure.
Easily.
Definitely gorgeous out there. And then we turned around and we walked back along the river as much as we could.
Yep.
We had lunch sitting alongside the river, which was nice.
It was.
Then we jumped the shuttle back to the lodge.
Yeah, we did. And, you know, we walked I think we walked maybe the Grotto Trail from the Grotto to the lodge. I don't remember exactly what the details were. I think we just wanted to get out and stretch our legs a bit. And then we just headed back into town because really the only thing, well, there's 2 areas of Zion we missed. One was Angel's Landing. We didn't apply for a permit. She couldn't do it.
Never, ever.
I would have done it in a heartbeat. I thought about applying for a daily permit. I almost pulled the trigger, but there are spas in town. So if I would have driven over there and said, yeah, I'm going to go on this 4-hour hike, she would have gone to the spa. It would have cost me a small fortune. I didn't want to go that bad. Maybe next time. She wants to come back. I want to do Angel's Landing. We'll get it next time. One thing we didn't do that I wish we had taken the time to do was to explore the eastern side of the park, which is basically the plateau that is east of the Zion Mount Carmel Tunnel. It is not an area that's really frequented by a lot of the visitors. Most people just come straight into the main visitor center up through Springdale, hop on the shuttle bus. The shuttle bus doesn't go to the east side of the park. The only way to get there is either to drive through the park and through the tunnel, or to come in through the eastern entrance from Kanab, which is what we did. And the eastern side of the park, it's basically got some pull-offs. places where 2 or 3 cars can park, and you just park and you get out and go. And we see cars park, and we saw some bighorn sheep. We saw photographers. We saw hikers. There are mountains you can climb up. There are streams and valleys and canyons. It's basically a free-for-all. I think there are a few trails in the area.
We tried to do one, but it was closed though.
Yeah, the Canyon Overlook Trail was closed for a rock slide hazard. There may be a few other trails you can access from a different section of the park, but for the most part, the area we're talking about is you just park your car and go. And it's really pretty. It's different from the canyon. It looks really nice.
And I would say just 2 things. One, just driving through the tunnel was pretty phenomenal. I loved it. It's 1.1 mile long, and it has some cutouts, some intentional holes. Garrett said it's for airflow. I said it's escape holes in case there's a rock cave in or something. But that tunnel was built all the way back in 1930, and then you drive through it, and then you do some switchbacks into the park. It's a beautiful drive. And then the other thing I would caution people are there are deer everywhere. There are signs, deer crossing, deer migration area, not necessarily in the park, but just around Utah. Yeah. And we would see packs of 5 to 10 deer crossing the road. They typically don't cross one at a time. So if you see one cross, brake, pause, and make sure that no more are coming out.
And even more important, you got to brake and pause and watch out for the tourists. For some reason, a lot of people come to these parks, and I guess it's because of where they live. They've never seen deer, or they want to stop on the side of the road and take pictures of deer, okay? We live in the South, we see deer. They come to our neighborhood. Not a big deal. You see a deer, you move on. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of people out here who want to stop and look at the deer. So if you see a deer, you better watch out for the cars too.
Yeah. But I think that pretty much wraps up our video on Zion, at least until we come back and make another video about it. Definitely worth coming. So stay tuned for our next episode, and hope you have a great week.
Yep, have a great week. Bye.